Our Finance Committee meeting for this evening. With the council's indulgence, I have asked Mr. Walsh to go over 3 CIP items first, and then we're going to open a public hearing on those 3 items, and then we'll go back to the top and work our way through. So correct me if I'm wrong. Just generally by a show of hands, I'm guessing that you're here for one of 3 items. Number 1 might be bleachers Memorial Field. Okay, so far, good guess. Number 2, Terrell Park and Turf Field. Okay, and 3rd, Langley Parkway. Is there people here for other items? What do you got?
Whitney Road Extension.
Got it?
The Greenway Trail.
Yep.
Field. Jet.
Soccer light.
Got lights. Okay, all right. So if we do those 3, I think most of you can go enjoy your
Just stand.
wonderful evening in Concord.
One more.
Yeah, we're here for Peach Park.
Yep, no, I got you. You good? Good. Okay. Did we come to with that?
Yep.
Fine. Perfect. So, Mr. Walsh, why don't you take it away, and you can start with Memorial Field.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening. The first one is CIP 557, which is Memorial Field. It's on, and by the way, we are going to be using the spreadsheet in the budget, which is capital improvement project by category. It starts on page 217 of your budget. I'm going to skip ahead to page 231 for CIP 557, which is Memorial Field. It is $50,000 to update a structural assessment of the 2012 structural assessment of bleachers located at the football stadium and track, as well as the Doan Diamond property facility. Terrell Park, any questions on Memorial Field, Your Honor?
Yeah. What page are we on?
So I started on page 231.
31.
Yeah. 231, Memorial Field number 557.
Anything you want to say about it?
Just that it's $50,000 next year to update the 2012 structural assessment of the bleachers located at the track and the football stadium, as well as Doan Diamond.
Okay.
Terrell Park was one of the items that you're interested in. There is no funding. It's CIP 59. It's on page 230 of the budget. In summary, there is no funding in fiscal 2019. There is funding carried in fiscal 2021, $2 million, which would essentially start the project, build the field, and then in the out years of the budget, there would be additional monies for construction of bleachers and other infrastructure. Any questions on that?
Councilor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. The bleacher study at Memorial Field, is that going to also take a look at how the placement of the bleachers at the main field would impact the ability of that field to potentially be expanded for additional uses such as soccer and lacrosse?
So this is a preliminary, it's basically a needs assessment and cost update. So we're going to look at various options. Those options would include rehabbing what is there, potentially removing what is there, and or removing and replacing what is there. So we can certainly take a look at the possibility of reconfiguring the bleachers and what cost impacts might be. But that's essentially the goal of the study.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions on that? All right, and lastly?
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Langley Parkway, Pete?
Langley Parkway is CIP 40, and it's going to be under streets new construction. Let me just find where it is in your budget so I can direct you there. So streets new construction, CIP 40, Langley Parkway. It's on page 241 of your budget. It is an aspected project, and as the council knows, aspected projects mean they are not proposed for funding as part of the actual budget adoption this month. Funding came through for the match share of the project, then a resolution will be brought forward later in the fiscal year to appropriate the funds. $700,000 is proposed in fiscal 19, is for final design, permitting, and right-of-way acquisition for Phase 3 of Langley Parkway. Essentially, we're talking about where Langley Parkway ends at the Granite Ledges Assisted Living Facility, and it would run across, basically over to Rumford and Pennacook Street. It's about a 2.25-mile stretch. There's a map that shows that geography on page 267 of the budget. The construction cost of the project, if it was to go forward in the future, is about $12.5 million. Council knows Phase 1 of Langley Parkway, which is basically on the campus of the hospital, was completed in 1995. Phase 2 of the project, which was Clinton to Pleasant Street, was completed in 2008. Of the $700,000 being proposed in 19, $350,000 would be city funds, $350,000 would be donations. Happy to answer any questions.
And who has questions with that one? Council Chip?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Walsh, is it necessary for us to be carrying this in an asterisk form in the 2019 budget in order for us to move forward or take action? Should, for example, the non-city portion become available?
Traditionally, Counselor, this is how we've carried these funds that are dependent upon a third-party funding source, and we have other projects in the budget that are like this. It's a council question. You can choose to asterisk the city funds or not asterisk the city funds. We just did it this way because 350,000 of the total 700 is only going to get us so far, and I'm not sure how far away the matching funds might be from a third party.
Follow up, Your Honor? Sure. Thank you, Your Honor. So if, let's say that this was pushed back to 2020 and suddenly the matching funds became available, is there anything that would prevent us from taking action in 2017, similar to what we would do if it was sitting in the 2019 budget?
It would essentially be the same appropriation process. A separate resolution would have to be brought forward for the city funds and the donation, much like we're doing with the skate house on Monday night. And that could be done as part of it could be done anytime by the council. It would require a 2/3 vote to actually appropriate the funds, though.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else? Okay. I'll stop you here. Thank you. So we'll open the public hearing on these three pieces, and the first person I'll recognize is Mr. Habib. Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh, we're all set with the PowerPoint?
I believe we are out with the lights.
I am asking you to
Welcome. Good to see you, Samuel. So it's my understanding you got a presentation for us. Is that true? Sounds good.
My name is Samuel Habib. I am a senior at Concord High School. I am 18 years old. I like to go to Concord High football games, but the city owns the bleachers and there is not much space for wheelchairs. When I get into the stands, there are very few accessible seats, so there is never any room. And even in the accessible seats, my chair blocks the aisle for everyone else. I end up watching the game through the chain link fence. It is not a good view of the game and I can't sit with my friends at all. I really like sitting with my friends at other CHS events, like basketball, and I haven't been able to do that for 4 years at the football games because of the bleachers. I know some other schools have much more accessible bleachers. More accessible bleachers help everyone feel more included in the games, are easier to navigate for all abilities, and provide more seating for wheelchairs. I am asking you to rebuild the bleachers at Memorial Field to be more accessible. Everyone in our community should be able to get into the bleachers and enjoy the game. Thank you. I am asking you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you taking time to come out tonight and sharing that with us. And I appreciate very much the visual, the pictures as well. That's really helpful. So thanks. Do you need to take the stick with you before you go?
What's that?
Do you need to take the stick with you before you go, or okay, perfect. Good to see you, Samuel.
Thank you.
Councilor Sherliff.
Yeah, the gentleman raised a good point, and I wondered if Mr. Gill could let us know if there's an ADA requirement for bleachers, and if so, if the city is meeting that requirement.
Okay. You don't have to answer now, but...
At some point during the evening, yeah.
Perfect. Who else would like to testify? Councilor Kretovic, when you make your way up here, Councilor Kretovic, why don't you ask your question?
I just wanted to let the rest of the council know that I had the opportunity to go out to Memorial Field with Samuel and his father to see the challenge that Samuel has to even get up our ramp, to get in position for the handicap seating that is available to him. And his greatest concern is what he blocks for other people to get to their seating because there isn't enough depth behind his wheelchair in order for people to pass safely. We have conversations all the time about accessibility on our sidewalks and what the appropriate amount of space is in between, and we don't provide that in the bleachers today, understanding that when those bleachers were built many years ago, the requirements for accessibility were much different than they are today. The greatest challenge that he has is that he is separated from his friends, and there is no opportunity for inclusion in participation for the spectator portion that he can have being at Memorial Field. And the last thing that I would say is that Samuel was extremely disappointed to hear that this project will never happen in the time that he is going to be at the high school. He's really graduating in 9 days, and he's putting forth this effort specifically because he wants to see other people with these challenges not have to face the obstacles that he did during his time in our community. Thanks.
You said that really well, too.
Thank you.
All right, who else would like to testify? Over here. Good evening and welcome.
Hi there, my name is Melissa Heimbach, and I live at Rockland Road here in Concord. I'm going to be brief because I have to run off to another meeting, but I just want to make sure that every building project, any building rehabilitation, any improvements that are made in Concord from today on should all be ADA compliant and use inclusive design and universal design so that it can create community, so that it's inclusive for all of us. And I really hope that when my kids are attending a Concord High event or attending the 4th of July celebration or going to a track meet, that my family and my friends, that we all can sit together and actually have a decent view of the field. Please keep that in your thoughts while you're assigning finances and making plans for this community in the future. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Who else do we have? I think I saw another hand over here. There we are. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you. So my son couldn't be here with us today. He's in Stockholm for a wedding. But as you can see, I have a little 4-year-old who also uses a wheelchair. And I just wanted to remind folks that the time that we take now to think about the inclusion aspect of things going beyond the ADA minimum, which we are probably meeting here, and yes, you do need to meet the ADA, that to actually frame it as think about it as including these students, as Samuel so eloquently put forth, that this is going to be affecting students for generations to come. These bleachers are going to be there for decades. So my son may only be in preschool right now, but Samuel's leading the way for him. And so this is a really important project for us because he's going to be in Concord High in a decade or so. And I'm really hoping and looking forward to seeing him up in the bleachers with his friends, with his peers, and with us, his family. And so I thank you all for considering this, and please reach out. We'd be happy to come down to Memorial Field with you, show you how tough it is currently with the wheelchairs. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'm sorry, I didn't do an introduction, really.
Come on, Dieudonné.
Sorry, I'm Dieudonné Dustin Badarai, and I was born and raised in Kentucook. I currently live in East Concord. We own a home there, and that's where we're raising our son. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good evening, everybody.
Member of the school board attending a city council.
I know, you know, I'm bridging the gap here. I'm bridging the
No,
gap.
this is the school board, right?
I know. I came out of the school administration office, and let me go on record as saying I'm not representing the school board in my comments. On a serious note, I'm speaking as a private citizen. So I'm Chuck Crush. I live at 22 North Curtisfield. I have a daughter, Allie, who has Angelman syndrome, a significant disability. She is getting ready to go to Runlet Middle School. Quite excited about the transition, a little nervous. Allie likes to go to Memorial Field. She has a different set of challenges than Samuel, but I don't think she can make it to the top of the bleachers as it is now. I'm certainly cognizant of the financial impact of this for the taxpayers, and council has certainly a heavy task and a heavy burden in making decisions. But I would ask you and encourage you to take a look at this on behalf of the students of Concord and on behalf of our school system and our city at large. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Oh, no, don't go. Don't go. Anybody have questions? So I understand you're here as a private citizen.
Yep.
But you do happen to serve on another body here in the city.
I do.
So I'll just plant a seed with you.
Okay.
Maybe the school district, since the school district uses Memorial Field about 80 to 90% of the time, maybe you guys should take it from us.
I think it's a conversation we continue to have.
You could maintain it, and what do you think?
I think it's a conversation we can continue to have.
It is great to
That
see
was
you.
good. I'll keep saying the same thing. We did this. I got time. We can order dinner.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Good to see you.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see you.
Appreciate it. Welcome.
All right. My name's Karen Knowles. I live at 18 Alder Creek Drive. My son and daughter both participated in track and field and football at Memorial Field. And this year we had a challenge with my dad, 84 years old and in a wheelchair. And I made the decision to have him not come to Concord, to have him to go to Spalding, because the Spalding bleachers, he could get up into, sit in a spot and not block the walkway. And I remembered that from going to games, but I also remembered that because people with strollers were using it for the same area. So I think we have to think globally with who it's impacting, and in the way that there's more and more people that find themselves at one point or another needing that accessibility. And I think we proved that through downtown, and now we can prove it by changing the Memorial Field in the same way.
Thank you. Anybody? No? Good to see you as always. Thank you so much. Who's next? Welcome.
My name is Betsy McNamara. I live at 40 Roger Avenue here in Concord. I'm the proud mom of your first speaker. And I want to echo something that Karen Knowles just said, which is that this wouldn't only benefit my kid and some other children who are represented here, but also elders. I had the opportunity to attend my nephew's graduation last week at a different high school, and they had bleachers that look much like what those are. And his grandparents, one had great difficulty walking and the other one had used a walker, were able to easily and very comfortably access the stadiums and watch the graduation in comfort and with good viewing.
Thank you. Anybody have questions? So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So you have spent time sitting around this table,
Yes.
working on Main Street, and
Yeah.
you made many, many doorways accessible to everyone in this community, and
Yeah.
I appreciate your
Which is
time
wonderful.
doing that. So, interestingly, how these are kind of all brought together. We're going to talk about Terrell Park pretty soon. One of the things about Terrell Park is there are folks who would like to build a new turf field.
Yeah.
And with a turf field would come new bleachers, new stadium, new parking, etc. So to redo the bleachers at Memorial Field is going to be a significant cost.
Yeah.
could be over $1 million to do, you know, all the bleachers. What if what would you think if we were to take that money and put it into a new venue, so that you could actually have, so people, for instance, if you play women's field hockey, you're relegated to the outfield of Rollins Park. I love Rollins Park, but it is uneven. You don't get the same treatment than if you play Concord High football, because you play for the stands. If you play lacrosse, you're relegated to the backfields. If we had a turf field, then everyone could play. You'd have new stands, and it'd be greater accessibility. So given choices, because I feel like we're always, unfortunately, put in that position of taking limited resources at a time and putting them in the best, most useful places. Where do you think, what would be your advice to put the resources to something new or to fix the existing?
So are you asking me if it's either or, Terrell Park or Memorial Field?
Kind of.
And is Terrell Park where you're envisioning, or in this question you're envisioning that the football games would be held and everything?
I think right now it's identified Terrell Park. I think the question's still open as to where the best location could be.
Right.
But the answer specifically would be, yes, a place where all the new athletic events could take place. You'd have camps, etc.
I have two answers to that. One is, because I'm not a city councilor, I get to say it should all be accessible. You shouldn't have to make the choice. I think every park in our city should be accessible, and I think we should not be deciding that there's one accessible location in the city and everything else is for kids who don't have mobility issues. And the second point is, I think that's a really big question. I mean, if the school decides to move all of its sports over to Terrell Park, then you definitely need to make those stands fully accessible, which they would be, because they'd be new stands and they'd have to be ADA compliant, right? But my sense is that the school's going to continue using Memorial Field, and I think that it's really important that for those games that these stands be accessible.
I appreciate your thoughts. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you have a good grasp of kind of what we deal with, so thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Thanks. Anyone else would like to share their thoughts? Good evening and welcome.
Hey. My name is Alden Schmitz. I'm a resident of Concord. I'm also going to register to vote tomorrow, so just keep that in mind.
I'll celebrate that.
Sweet, awesome. As people have said before me, the bleachers at Memorial Field and at many fields around the city are not up to current ADA standards. And there's just a handful of seating options for people with mobility issues or who use wheelchairs, and as you can see by the pictures, they fill up quickly. And this means that many people with mobility issues or who are using wheelchairs, they cannot access the bleachers and result in the obstructed view that Samuel and other people have mentioned, and they're not able to sit with their family or friends, which every other able-bodied person can. And so I understand that the city plans to replace and upgrade the bleachers within a few years, and so that they'll meet ADA standards for accessibility at the time. But I urge the city to move this planned upgrade to this year, the current year. The barrier is too big to wait. There are tons of kids who will benefit from this. There are tons of people in general who will benefit from this decision. And additionally, any further construction, reconstruction, anything of the sort should be ADA, which will have to be, but also include and examine universal design, which ensures inclusivity for all members of this community. So just keep that in mind.
I'll just share a couple things with you. First, really happy you're registering to vote. well done. Number two is you're not going to get a chance to vote for us, either for or against us, because we're not on the ballot this year.
Yes.
But the fact that you said that in like as if like, you're watching us means that you're going to participate in municipal elections. And do you realize in our city we only have about 15% participation in municipal elections? So I want you to tell your friends and your family and your neighbors and others they should all participate in local government. Because that's where the real fun is.
Exactly.
But if you're really excited and you want to vote in November, you could also actually even sign up to run for state representative this year. It only costs you, I think, $5 right over $2 over here at City Hall.
It's on sale.
The clerk's office will take good care of you, and I think it would be great for you to run for the
Yeah,
state
and
rep.
I think it would be great as we get more young people into office. I think you're going to see a rise and a great change in social justice issues and mobility issues like this one.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Who else do we have? Anyone else?
Yep.
Good evening. Welcome.
Hi. My name is John Sadowski, over on South Curtisville Road, and I didn't have any remarks planned, so this is kind of a little off the cuff, but I just wanted to be another voice of saying how we're sitting in the model of accessibility in downtown Concord, and it would just be a shame as we're improving all these outdated infrastructures that we're not putting all of our effort into making our community as inclusive as possible every step of the way. So I'm just another voice here shouting from the rooftops to include everyone and everything all the time, and that's all.
Thank you very much. Well said. Anyone else? See none?
Thank you.
Okay.
Enjoy your evening.
Yep.
Mr. Swicker.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Roy Schweiker. I fully agree with the idea that more things should be accessibly designed. The only thing I disagree with is I find it disturbing that the city cannot keep Main Street accessible. They allow people to place tables and potted plants and so forth in the pathway where the people with accessibility issues are supposed to be walking, and it seems to take gazillions of studies and you still haven't managed to eliminate that yet. So I would like to see, let's have some help on Main Street while we're doing it. As far as the bleachers on Memorial Field, I entirely agree with the mayor that maybe the study should specifically include some sort of cost allocation as to what percentage of time these are used by school events versus city events, and ask the school board to pay for the percentage of time they're being used for school events. And I'm sure that they'll have plenty of people showing up to school board meetings to raise their share, so that'll make it easier on the city taxpayers. And as far as the Terrell Park, I understand that this turf field has been in the planning for a long time and keeps creeping along, but meanwhile this past year it seems a number of private individuals or outfits or whatever you want to call them are building or planning to build turf fields commercially, including indoor turf fields, and I would hope that before we go build another one, someone updates the studies to determine whether in fact we need a city-owned turf field with all the private ones that are suddenly going to be available, or you sit there as a white elephant. And lastly, as far as Langley Parkway, no one seems to have talked on that yet. I think that I talked the other night about the 80-20 rule, that you can get sometimes 80% of the benefit from 20% of the cost. And I'd like to seriously consider the idea of, let's say we only build it in this phase as far as Auburn Street. That would be relatively inexpensive because you're essentially building on property the city already has access to, within an area that doesn't require, relocation of anybody and so forth. And if you were to get that thing built, you would in fact be obtaining much of the benefit of the entire thing with much less disturbance to Auburn Street. I think Auburn Street in fact might benefit because people that presently drive the full length of it and cut through some of those other streets, West Washington and whatnot, would now turn on the new road and go that way. At the same time, it would still be available in emergencies if the existing congested route somehow got blocked. So by just spending the money to build it out as far as Auburn Street, you'd be getting most of the benefit of it at a fraction of the cost. And if you decide to do the whole thing, I hope that in addition to hitting up the hospital for some money, you hit up whoever winds up owning the Lincoln Financial buildings, because this is going to be, a big boon to that property. And if they're getting a huge benefit from a city project, maybe they should be like the hospital and St. Paul's in the past and contribute a share of it. And if they don't think it's worth it, then maybe it isn't. Maybe we shouldn't build it at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? See none. Thank you much. So we have two other topics, Terrell Park and Langley Parkway. Anybody else want to testify and handle one of those? Mr. Tarbell.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good evening.
Council.
Welcome.
My name is Eaton Tarbell. I'm here tonight as I'm the president of the Concord Crush. What the Concord Crush is it's essentially a 1st through 8th grade youth lacrosse program. We've broken up into 4 different age groups, 2-year bricks. We have both boys and girls teams, 13 teams in total. We've had upwards of 15, but we've been generally rising over the years. I understand that we've virtually doubled in size in the last 10 years. We have about 300 participants this year, 2018, in the Concord Crush. And really, we could benefit tremendously by a turf field in Concord. We're in June now, so it's a bad time to look at the fields because they're all wonderful and dry and green. But if you could remember what they were like 7 weeks ago, they were mushy. We were canceling games. My team didn't have any games in April. They were all canceled. So we basically have done most of our season just in the month of May. They were canceled either because there was snow on the field or it was raining. It was just a disaster of an April. We play on Sundays, and if you go back and look at the record, it rained virtually every Sunday. A turf field would be fantastic in that it would not require us to move the schedules around and would allow us to play a regular season. Moving the schedule is an administrative nightmare. We have, like I said, 13 teams. Each team has 15 to 20 players on it. They got families, we got referees, we got coaches. So to find a new time is really quite an administrative nightmare. But beyond that, beyond just playing a regular season as it should be played, I think by, field of dreams, build it and they will come. If there's a turf field available, there's other club programs around the state that would use it. They would seek it out and look for it. We could certainly expand the probability of doing a camp or earlier season activities. There would be a lot of potential for use. Also, I want to point out that the Concord Crush plays other towns. So we're playing towns from all over the state of New Hampshire. We're playing Keene, Manchester, Nashua, wherever. Wherever there's a team, we're playing them. Often when there's a rainy day in New Hampshire, other teams will call us and say, hey, we're rained out, let's play on your turf field. And I got to explain to them, we don't have a turf field. Really, the Capitol doesn't have a turf field? No, sorry, we play a memorial field in the back. So we'll wait for a drier day. The point being is this time, there's a lot of towns throughout the state that have put them in that are attracting residents, presumably for parents that are a little bit crazy in what they do for their sports, and if there's a town that's supporting them, it does get those parents' attention. And we need to make sure that we go in the right direction and get that turf field, and it's been talked about for a while, and what I want to make clear tonight is it's time for action. We got to get it done.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Want to answer a question?
Oh, sorry.
Councilor Mattson.
So, thank you, Your Honor. So there was a mention made earlier of other turf fields being built. If there were other turf fields being built in the area, would that influence your decision to use the Terrell Park field if it were to be built, or other?
There are similar indoor facilities, Bow Field House. I don't know how open they'd be to allowing a program like ours to use it. They generally create teams to fill their own time, is what I've seen in the private fields. I've never seen any town throughout the state facility. I'm aware of them. I've seen the private club teams seek them out and use them. But, I mean, realistically what we are is we're a parent-run organization. We don't have employees. We don't charge much more than to keep the program going. We try to do a good job, but make it affordable. We charge $150 what the Concord Crush takes. And by the way, that's paid through the city. We use the city registration, so the city gets a little cut on that for registration. But to answer your question, I've never seen any of the 40 lacrosse teams that are available for Concord to play playing in such a private field. So I'd be surprised if they allowed it. But even if they did, I don't know if it would be economically feasible